This episode is sponsored by Monkey Stuff. Monkey Stuff makes things for makers. We're inspired every day by the craft and creativity of makers and design and manufacture tools and accessories to try to make your making life a bit more delightful. Our products are designed in California, by makers and for makers, and manufactured in the USA. Check out our line of pottery accessories and tools at monkeystuff.com. Follow us on Instagram to see what we're up to in our studios, and keep on making great things.
This episode is brought to you by Snow Farm, the New England Craft Program. Are you looking to take your ceramic skills to the next level? Check out the incredible 2 to 5 day workshop offerings at Snow Farm, where world-class ceramic artists lead hands-on immersive workshops in wheel throwing, hand building, surface design, and more. Whether you're just starting or refining your voice in clay, there's a workshop for you. Set in the stunning Berkshire Hills of Western Massachusetts, this residential craft school is the perfect place to create, connect, and get inspired. To register for a workshop today, visit snowfarm.org. Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 563 of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Today on the show, I am joined by Erin Lambers, who started her career as a potter doing wholesale, but later moved back to her hometown of Dayton, Ohio, where she bought a ceramic supply store. In our interview, we talk about her philosophy of blending education and sales, the practical aspects of running a store with over 6,000 products, and how to set up a business for the long haul. If you'd like to find out more, you can check out cornellstudiosupply.com. Before we get to that episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about Patreon. That's one of the ways you can help support the show financially, and you get lots of perks for doing that, including special merch and a backlog of shows that are no longer on major podcast feeds. That podcast, which is called The Tales from the Vault, features at this point over 40 episodes that have been remastered and that are ad-free. Some of the recent ones that I've just put up to the feed are Richard Notkin, Stephen Young Lee, Tara Wilson, Mel Griffin, and more. If you'd like to check out those episodes, you can become a patron at patreon.com/redclayrambler. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. So I thought that we would start talking actually about Texas, because I know you from your Ohio days, but I know that it dates back to Texas.
Ohio days. I do not have a twang.
So tell me about the early days in Texas.
The early days in Texas. Well, I ended up in Texas early on when I was in my early 20s. I moved there when I was 23 from Germany, because I actually was in Germany for a year. And I studied with a potter there and took a hand building class at the university in Germany. And then I moved to Texas and I taught at a small art center and the Longview Museum of Art. I lived in what I call the armpit of Texas. So I'll like raise up my left arm and like show them, in the eastern part of Texas. So I did live in the Arklatex is what it was called, in a little town called Marshall, Texas. Started my wholesale business there. I started teaching classes. The art center kind of dissolved, and I started teaching 2 to 3 classes out of my home there in Texas. And my closest supplier was 2.5, 3 hours away, and that was Dallas. We were, a half hour from Shreveport, Louisiana. And I started an empty bowls project there for the local food pantry. We raised like, I don't know, $10,000 or $15,000 for that over the course of a few years. And we did community projects through where we would have building days or glazing days for bowls that people would make, or I would make them in the schools where I taught.
But where did you grow up?
I grew up in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay, so for you to come back to take over Cornell Studio Supplies was really a homecoming of sorts.
It was, yeah. It's actually kind of funny because growing up, this place, like, it had every single tool, and they were all on a counter. You could say, I want to look at that tool. Everything was behind glass. They had a few samples of clay on the floor. They had, one of every Brent wheel, slab rollers, everything you need for the kilns, a couple kilns on the showroom floor, and a handful of books. And I knew that I could find the tool that I needed. And, those catalog days, right? You go through the catalog and you can say, okay, I need this wooden tool and I need this particular size sponge. And she would mail, but I would come home and I could find the tools that I needed. And I found this place as a customer when I was 18 years old. So my art teacher, I was into clay, and she goes, you need to go down to Cornell. And then, when you're making your own money and paying your own gas at 18, you kind of go, oh gosh, do I really want to drive 10 minutes?
Right.
But then in Texas, being 3 hours from a local supplier, I had to buy everything via catalog or when the internet started. And I had really terrible experiences. I would order my equipment online or through the catalog, and it would get delivered on a semi, and it would be 9:00 at night. And or I would have to drive 3 hours to go get 10 boxes of clay. And then I started shipping it in, on a pallet, because I went through probably a ton of clay every 2 to 3 months when I was wholesaling. So yeah, and then the opportunity came. We moved back here, and I saw a for sale sign tucked up real close. And I called the realtor, and she said, because I came in and I asked Normandy Cornell, who was the previous owner, if she was selling. And she said, oh no, we're just trying to sell the business or the building. And so I called the number anyway. And because they were older. John celebrated his 70th birthday when they sold, and Normandy celebrated her 75th. So, and she started the business when she was in her 40s. It was just her. And then she had an employee, Carolyn Snyder, who's still one of my customers. And I don't know, like, I got the realtor on the phone, and she said, well, the building's for sale and I can show it to you. I said, well, what about the business? And she said, the business is for sale separately. So being 28 years old, just moving to town, because I found out, I was here like almost 6 months before I found out that they were for sale. And it was, my parents would pick me up and take me to lunch. And I was downtown with Hamilton Dixon in his studio. He's a welder here in Dayton. And my mom drove me around the other way of the building because we're on a corner. And that's how I saw the for sale sign. So it kind of, I was looking for a place to have a studio to teach, like I did my classes down in Texas. And I needed a parking lot. I needed a place to make my own. But then when I found out that they were for sale, all I could think about was, I moved back here because this is home. But also I had been living away from my local supplier for so long. It was important to have something like this. I didn't want it to go away. I saw the asset for the community, and it was like a no-brainer.
Well, for people that aren't familiar with Dayton, and I should say that people will recognize your voice And that Dayton is the gym city, because that's what you always say in your sponsorship spots.
Yes.
So thank you for being a sponsor. But also, can you just explain Dayton to people, like sort of its industrial past and then what it is now?
Once upon a time, like many places, GM was here. We also had NCR, which is a National Cash Register company. Imes Cat and Dog Food was here. Mead, the paper company, was here. Now, Dayton is obviously home to the Wright brothers. So we are home of aviation, no matter what North Carolina says. And through that, we have the Engineers Club that they started, Wilbur and Orville Wright. And through that, many patents have come through here with engineers. Dayton is a huge engineer area. We have Wright Pat Air Force Base and the Air Force Museum. But in the last 20, 30 years, all those industries have left. The Engineers Club still exists. The University of Dayton still has a great research department and engineering program, along with many of the other universities in the area. But in art history, I learned from one of my professors, it takes 100 years to build a city and 10 to tear it down. And that was part of the goal, was investing in Dayton when we moved back.
In buying a business like this that has established roots but maybe needs some new energy is perfect for a 28-year-old. So
Yeah.
do you think that being young and adventurous, like how do you think that served you in terms of buying a business like this?
Yeah, so both of my parents are entrepreneurs. My dad was a contractor. He's retired. He built houses, worked when he needed to, during recessions and whatnot. And my mom was a dance teacher, still is actually. So I had already learned how to live the lifestyle of owning your own business. It's very stressful. So you have to be able to manage stress, because you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about an order you thought you placed and you didn't, and you needed it, for whatever reason. Like the financial, you never know, especially in retail, how things are going to be. And though this is a supply for people to make things, it's still retail. It's still dependent on how other people feel, um, you know. But I did have experience when I was in college. I worked for American craft gallery called Zigzag Gallery. Kim Meganson was one of my teachers in school. And through that experience working there, I learned about wholesale. I learned about retail. I learned what goes into having a storefront, the shipping costs, the UPS, the mail, the whole paying bills, and just everything that comes into owning a business like this. So that experience, plus my wholesale experience, plus my background of my parents, I think that's what set me up to be the person. Because the Cornells did try to sell before I walked in. And it was a lot of work. I mean, they had, over 35 years had just been steady and the same. They had been in a previous location. It had arson, and then they moved here. I don't remember when. It was before I started in clay 27 years ago.
What were the bumps in the road early on? Because it's one thing to sell your pots, because you had done that. You've been a wholesaler of your own work, but it's a totally different thing to sell scut kilns or to sell a wheel, something you're not making that object.
Right.
What were those like early bumps in terms of learning how to sell these things?
Well, really, it's believing in the product. So when I took over, a lot of people thought that I would eventually make pots again. And I do make them, not very often. When I do, I make them for myself. I don't have to sell them anymore. And the selling of the equipment and the supplies is easy when you have companies that stand by their product. And I'm I'm experienced in the kiln companies and everything. Like I used them myself. I had 3 kilns myself. I used different clays from, I used Trinity Ceramic Supply clay. I used Laguna clay. I've used standard clay. I have traveled all around the country to various suppliers before I owned, and that was through NSECA attendance, every time, because I needed to. I wasn't close to a supplier, so it was important for me to go and see what they had, see if there was something that I needed to use to make my life easier in the studio or more creative or more productive. And my art education background allows me to connect with the people that are coming in and teach them about the products and what might be best for their use. I don't know. I always had this weird belief that I could probably sell anything to anyone. It's one of those skills, you have it or you don't, or you could learn it. And I think I could teach a lot of people how to. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I know that you've done a lot of is bringing in workshop people to teach workshops at the place, which not only brings energy because people come to take the workshop, but you're also seeing, what do these artists use? Like what tools do they need? Because they give you a list of what they need when they come.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. So obviously, like my situation here in being a supply store, but also wanting to educate people to make better pots, which is really why I have the workshops. I think it's very important for people that are teaching clay to continue educating themselves. That's what I did as a clay educator in Texas. That's how I got into the workshop network. My students wanted to learn more about raku. Well, 20 years ago, I didn't have the internet with videos, and YouTube didn't even exist. So I got Stephen Brampton's book and I read it cover to cover. And I did exactly what he says in his book in order to create a raku kiln, which unfortunately that book is out of print. He is working on trying to reprint it. But that was a godsend to me, not having the money to go to a workshop. And then I did save up the money and I went to Dallas and took a workshop with a home potter. And I looked at what they were doing and I thought, well, I could do that. So I raised the money through my students. I didn't have to put any money out of pocket. We flew him in and he gave us my first workshop. And then I had somebody that attended that workshop that wanted Lisa Orr, who was only 5 hours away from us, to come. And so Lisa came up, and that was during the talc debacle when Nital closed. And so we were mixing Texas talc into blackjack clay, which is a local Texas clay. And we were trying to get the temperature lower. And she realized I wasn't doing any, I wasn't participating in the workshop. So she asked me to come down. And that was my second workshop. And through her, I met Ryan McCurley in Austin, and I hosted a workshop at his studio. I brought people in and created a workshop for him. And through that, it was really important for me as a workshop host, was to make sure that the artists were getting paid a fair wage for what they were doing. And that is one thing that for the most part is not it's not part of my, the business money making end, because it's not about that for me. So it's about education. And that's why I saw this as an asset for it not to leave, was of what it did for the community, what it did for me, how it changed my life. If it was here in the Dayton area, maybe it would still change more people's lives. And I feel like I've done that.
I know from teaching with you that you really mean that you pay artists a living wage, and you paid me more than what I was even asking when I was teaching with you. So talk to me through how that thought process goes? Because you could do these workshops to make a lot of money for the business.
Yeah, I could. I could. That's probably my biggest downfall is like I just want to be able to live and survive and go to Ensika and buy a couple nice pots every once in a while. And that I think is, that's my parents' teaching. You don't need more than what's yours. And what you have to offer, or any of the other, 40 some people that I've hosted, it's not my, what do they have words? It's not my goal to make money off of somebody else's ideas or teachings. They're not mine. And in that, I'm supporting you in hopes that this business will still be here in 50 years because you recommended it to somebody else, because of the customer care that we do provide, and that it is important for me to pay my employees and keep them here, rather than me to, go to Bali for a month. Like it's that part's not important to me.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of over 4,000 objects made by over 1,000 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfieldcollection.com. Well, across the board, I think people would be surprised at what are the profitable parts of being a business owner, a supply business owner, and what are the not profitable. So in my experience, things like kilns, because they have a set price, like you can't double the price of a scut kiln. Like that is, yeah, I guess you could try.
I wouldn't stay in business. Honestly, it's the same thing if you think about it. Like when we make a cup, right? You can make a cup after 6 months and you can sell that cup. You can make a cup after 6 years and sell that cup. You can make a cup after 60 years and sell that cup. And if they're all priced the same, the person in the end might be okay with whatever they have. You get what you pay for in that cup and the time, that goes into making that. There's a lot of artists that we get the silly questions of, well, how long did this take you? And then you have the true answer that it took me a minute to throw it, a minute to pull the handle, 2 minutes to attach it, 24 hours to wait on it, and then everything else that goes into that. Or there's the, well, it took me 16 years and 8 years of school and, whatever it does, whatever we want to tell them. But it's the end purpose of that cup, right? It's to share what you love doing with your hands with someone else. And the same thing goes into the equipment sale. Like, it's like buying a car, there's a sticker price. And then there's who's willing to sell it to you the cheapest. Well, if you get it the cheapest, you might not get the service that comes with it. And here, I do my best. The internet's really hard, but I have people that call all the time, and they have a kiln and it's brand new and they haven't used it and it won't work. And they got it during COVID and they moved 3 times, and I show up and that kiln is just fine. It just needed a download. Or I go into a school and they got it out of a catalog, and the catalog company charged them more than I would have charged them to deliver it and set it up and show them how to use it. And they forgot to hook up the hinge that makes it really easy to open. It's It's the small things. And here locally, like with my teachers and whatnot, like if they get their clay with us, and they support us. I have many teachers that they just are so thankful for the information that we provide and the service and support that we give, and that we have given for 50 years, that they will support us no matter what. When there's a huge increase in clay price because um, feldspar has changed or there's no EPK, um, the way that we scramble because of global warming in the materials and being underwater or not being able to get it because of lawsuits or industry, not selling to the small businesses such as potters and supply companies. Um, they understand and they're still willing to put their money there because of what that means.
What are the most profitable parts of the business?
Well, shipping comes into play on everything, so it's really hard for me to say the most profitable. But any supply company, clay is going to be our bread and butter. Everything else is extra, but everything else is used for that clay. Equipment can look like huge amount, but it's not, you know, with the discounts and things that you have to get and the shipping and the cost and the trash that comes with unpacking new kilns. Yeah, I mean, wholesale retail. We have overhead and lights and employees and insurance that just keeps going up and vehicles and fuel. Freight is astronomical.
So I guess a local sale in a way is the best for you, regardless of what you're selling. If someone can walk in the store and buy it, and you're not losing on the time to pack it, the time to take it to the post office or have them pick it up and to ship it, you're going to make more money.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's for me, if it's really about that. I don't know. Cause like Lynn, like I don't want people to think that I'm doing this by myself. So Lynn's been with me for 12 years and I do need to talk about her. She has been the like greatest asset I probably could have ever asked for. Because through this business, I do have 4 kids. We haven't touched on that at all. But I took this over at 28 and I had my first one at 31. And you can have a child and have thoughts that your life is not going to change. But as an artist, regardless, it's going to with one. So I wanted 4, and Lynn was here for all 3 of them. She wasn't here for the first one, but she was here for the other 3. And her customer skills, she worked the bar for years. So she knows how to swing a conversation with somebody. And one of my main goals so that people build trust in us is making sure that we're not selling them something that they don't actually need. We have 6,000 products, but you don't need all 6,000 of them. Like to make a pot, you might only need 5, and I'm okay just selling you those 5. And Lynn is really good about that. She just dealt with an online order where a lady bought like 15 different items, and we had one that was out of stock, and it was like a small MKM stamp. Lynn spent 25 minutes with her on the phone picking one out. That's okay, because that person now has trust in us that their money's being well spent because we're willing to take the time for them. Yeah, I've troubleshooted kilns over the phone with people in Illinois and Iowa. They call for a thermocouple and they tell me what their error code is. I'm like, that's not the right error code, but you probably need a new thermocouple, and we go through and they get the right products that they need.
When it comes to a business that has 6,000 products, like this is a kind of a silly question, but how often do you inventory and what is your system to keep track of all this?
Okay, so every year we used to close at Christmas and we would do inventory then. And then I started dreading Christmas because we would have to do inventory. So then we started doing it on Mondays because we're closed on Mondays, the month of December. And then COVID hit. That's all I got to say. That changed the way we did inventory. So instead of doing inventory all in one big lump, which was great for the beginning of the year, it gets everything set. But still, it's all manpower counting. And there are little tiny numbers on little tiny stamps. There can be glazes that all look the same, but if you don't pull them all off the shelf, you can't see that one might be different. And online ordering, that can be very frustrating for customers. I totally get that. Where you order something from a company and then they call you or they cancel the order altogether without even talking to you because they don't have the product, because their inventory was off. Well, before I took over, inventory was in a ledger, handwritten ledger. And the only thing she really inventoried was the glazes and the clay. And then everything else was just kind of like estimate. And after I took over, I brought so many new tools in and a couple new glaze lines and a couple new, clay bodies and whatnot, that it got bigger than that. And I had to have a computer to do it. Like I could just not focus on handwriting check marks every day of what we sold. And when I took over, business picked up. There was a smiling face behind the counter that was fresh and new and not tired and had answers to things that the previous owners, though very knowledgeable, didn't have because of my experience in clay. So it really picked up that first year. And then I brought in a computer system. It was QuickBooks point of sale program. And it took me about 10 years to really have a firm grasp on it. And everything was always spot on, but it was that integration into a website. So we had that plus a website, and a website originally only had like a handful of picked items that we sold on there, but really we didn't. It was just for people to see, it wasn't like we weren't one of the big companies that were already on the internet, and then COVID hit and we actually had a pretty good website that was integrated with our QuickBooks, and it would talk and keep our inventory straight and everything. And somewhere, since I'm in my 40s now, the update didn't happen on our website, and then it didn't happen again. And after the COVID bubble, because we were the only company that could stay open during that time, because we had the inventory and we only had one person on payroll. So Lynn was like doing everything. I would come in 2 days a week because I was home with 4 kids, and we were shipping all across the country. We went from shipping 1 package a week to like 10 or 15 a day. But in 2021, late, our website crashed.
Oh, wow.
And then my point of sale program also crashed.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So how do you restart? You literally just have to start the inventory from zero?
Well, I was able to find some guy somehow through QuickBooks to help me like pull it back up, but it crashed like 3 more times within a year. So we were able to pull everything back up, but then we lost all of our pictures. Our internet, like our website, was just completely gone. We just had to start over from scratch. And instead of starting over from scratch, Jeff with GR Pottery Forms, he said, you got to do Shopify. So I was like, oh no, I don't really want to. But he lent me his guy out that did his website, Matt, who works for him. So Matt tediously helped me transfer everything from QuickBooks to the Shopify. And it's funny what you don't know. And how reliant you get on other people that do know. So I've had to learn that. So now we are 2026. So we're 3.5 years into this program. And I feel like I know it. Everyone I know, my website could be better. It's just trying to stay on top of it, So we think it's pretty good now.
I think if you could sum up for young business owners that are listening right now, what would you tell them when the shit hits the fan? Because like losing your QuickBooks and your website when a lot of your business is shipping to people outside of Ohio or not local people, like what would you tell them?
Don't spend it all, and don't give yourself all of it. Your business needs money to float. And that goes for making pottery too. It's really hard in the beginning for people that think that that's all they need to do in order to make an income. And sometimes you do need an additional income. I could not have gotten out of debt as fast as I did if I didn't have a second income. And it wasn't mine, it was who I was married to. But I could have, it can work. But like growth is important in a small business. And that goes for making pots. When I first started, in order to produce 2,000 pounds of product every 4 to 6 weeks, I had to be able to reclaim all that clay, or I had to write it off. And then it became just this massive amount of clay, somewhere in the trash, which isn't the right way to make pots. A lot of people will think buying it in a bag is not the right way either. Everyone has to figure out what's right for them and their end outcome. But you can't spend every dime that comes in. You just can't, because one day you're going to need to apply to that show, and you're going to need, the $50 to apply to it, or the $150 to apply to it. And you got to be able to take the loss if you don't get in. But if you do get in, you might make $15,000 at that show selling your pots. And that goes for here too. I was ready for COVID. I emotionally kind of was ready too, because I just wanted to be home with my kids. I didn't know it was going to create this pandemic, having that wish. But the way I was ready was that I was just able to invest in inventory and just keep investing in inventory. And, it takes, like the old saying is, it takes money to make money. And if you don't save some of it, investing it in yourself, paying off your debt, those are the most important things. Young people that are listening to this, that are in undergraduate or thinking about going to get their degree in ceramics, make them pay you for it. The less debt you have, the more afraid you'll be to take the risks that are needed for success.
I feel like also as your and I's generation has moved into our 40s, and not that we're close to retirement, but retirement is not a crazy idea for people our age anymore. Saving just becomes so much more important. Just in general, saving for your personal life, saving for your business life, because you've lived long enough to see the up and down of this industry that we're in.
That's a hard topic for me, being a divorced woman in her 40s. Another tidbit of wisdom would be, right now, if you don't already, go set yourself up a retirement account. If you're just making pots, if you're working as a barista part-time, if you are teaching at a private school, private school that doesn't have a retirement pension account. I wanted to in my 20s. I was told it's ours.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the truth. And, $25 a month would have been something 20 years later.
Compound interest. It only takes a little bit of an investment.
Yes. And put your credit cards away. Please don't order on my website, or anyone else's, if you don't have the money for it. That will save money in the long run. I promise. Yeah.
Well, as I've started researching more of all of this in the last 10 years, this one simple thing someone told me is for every dollar you save, you're giving yourself $5 in the future.
Yeah. How far in the future is the question? Like that's what people don't think about because it has to be a lot of $1 for the
Yes.
compound interest to kick in and the length of time that it needs to do that. And if you just do it and you don't think you're going to be one of these bet 365 people, um, like Daphne Hatcher, I remember hearing her at the utilitarian clay. I was, I don't know, 24, 26 years old. And she said, for all you young people in this room, go buy a pug mill. Well, you know what I went and did? I went to Ensika and I researched all the pug companies and I bought myself a Peter Pugger. And the way I did that was through my wholesale business. I didn't spend it all. I put money aside and I knew how much it was going to cost. And I taught an extra class out of my studio just to pay for that pug mill. Oh, that pug mill I still have in the studio. And it's well paid for itself in the amount of clay and chiropractor visits from wedging clay. She had a frozen shoulder and, a couple vertebrae in her neck that were off just from doing repetitive motion. And you can't fix that when you're in your 50s and 60s. You can't fix it when you're in your 40s either. So that was one investment that I made for myself, and it definitely paid off.
Well, where do you see this business going? It's 50, I think we said this, but it's 50 years old this year. Where do you want it to go? Like, what do you want the next 5 years to be?
The next 5 years, I need a limb replacement. I did hire Adam. So if you call and you talk, Adam is with us now, and Cole is here as well. Annette sometimes answers the phone, but it's very small, and I'm okay with that. Um, you know, in my area, I have it used to be 9 competitors in a 250-mile radius. Um, there's enough to go around for everybody. um, but I want it to still be here in 5 years from now. And I want it to still be a hub for education and learning to make better pots the non-traditional way. That's what I want. And I hope that people are going to start seeing that buying from the easy buy now button and getting it delivered tomorrow, we might not be here in 5 years if people don't start making those changes. I hope it's here in 50 years.
Having an education first approach is I think a sound business model, because like you talked about how workshops are kind of non-traditional education, academia being traditional. Well, academics programs are shutting down left and right. So I think actually this system that you've created and that we all share in the workshop system, that might become the traditional way.
Yeah, yeah. I do help feed artists into different programs too. Because if I have them in their workshop and they are amazing, like, they've never been to utilitarian clay or to Aramon or Penland or the functional ceramic workshop in Worcester, Ohio, or even demonstrated in Ensika. Those are all connections that I have made because I do believe that having good pots in your life, to purchase of pots by professionals, make you make better pots. But I also believe the more education you have, the more people you see do the same thing a different way, makes you make better pots. And I think the people that know how to teach and that do make great pots, they need to keep doing that, because we have all these wonderful people that are getting to be retirement age. And if they were in academia, they might not have to make pots when they retire. And they might not teach either, because I've had a couple people that I call them, they're my ghosts, that I'm trying to catch them. um, I've been trying to get them to come for workshops, and I just can't get them here, because they're too busy. Sometimes they get too big and they're too busy, or their life changes. Yeah, make better pots.
To wrap up, can you leave the website so people can check out the business?
It is cornellstudiosupply.com, and that is 2 L's, singular studio, singular supply. And I did not change the name when I took over. My last name is not Cornell, because Normandy Cornell and her husband, John, who did the deliveries and kiln repair, started that business 50 years ago.
Well, this has been great. Good to see you. I'll see you in July when I'm coming out to teach with you again. I can't wait to see you.
Yeah. Everybody needs to sign up for that low fire hands-on glaze workshop. Thank you, Ben.
I'd like to thank Erin for coming on the show. It was great to chat with her, and I can't wait to go back out to Dayton, Ohio, and teach a workshop this summer, July the 24th through the 26th. It is going to be a practical, hands-on glaze mixing workshop. It's really almost going to be the ceramic lab version of my book, The Complete Guide to Low-Fire Glazes. If you're interested in low-fire, this would be a great introduction. You can sign up at cornellstudiosupply.com. Before we go, I wanted to thank today's sponsors. That includes Monkey Stuff, the Rosenfeld Collection of Functional Ceramic Art, and Snow Farm, the New England Craft Program. If your organization is interested in becoming a sponsor on the show, you can get in touch at talesofaredclayrambler.com/contact. I'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode. Thank you all for tuning in.
If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.